Afternoon again to everybody. I think we've given it an extra couple of minutes to give a few more people a chance to join, but we'll get started now. So thanks for joining us today. My name's Ollie Parker. I'm on the commercial team here at Blackbird. I'm also joined this morning by Lee Atkinson. Lee's a principal solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. And together we're going to talk a little bit about how Blackbird and AWS work together to enable remote and cloud-based video editing workflows. If you've been on any of our webinars or spoken to us before, you may hear a few familiar words this morning. We've got some new names, so I'm going to start at the beginning and give a bit of background on Blackbird. Lee's going to present for a short while and give us a bit of information on some of the core tenets of AWS and the services associated there as well. And then we'll take a look at a demo, and obviously what we're going to talk about today specifically is how Blackbird fits in with and on top of AWS infrastructure to allow you to basically make use of and capitalize on any content, whether that's live streams or files that you might have sat within that cloud. Okay, so you'll find if you have a look in your Zoom interface, there's a Q&A button. Please feel free to type questions as we go. We may answer some of those with text, but what we'll probably do is answer most of them verbally when we get towards the end of the presentation. We'll talk to you for about 30 or 35 minutes, hopefully, and then we should have plenty of time at the end to answer those questions as well. You'll also get a poll pop up towards the end of the session, so if you want any more details, you can fill that in, or we'll give you some contact details to get in touch directly as well. Okay, so I'll start off and do a bit of background on Blackbird before I hand over to Lee, and then we'll finish with the demo at the end. Now, you may already know, hopefully this is why you're here and joining us today. Blackbird is a cloud-based video editing solution. And essentially what we do is we have a unique bit of technology that allows us to do things with video in a browser that nobody else can do. And built around that technology is a platform that enables our customers to access video content that can be live streams or file-based content to do functions such as simple clipping, again, simple non-technical kind of sequencing and sequence creation, logging, metadata enrichment, all the way through to a full real-time multi-track nonlinear editor. And all of this runs entirely natively in the web browser. From there, we publish. So we publish and distribute directly out to social media platforms. But on top of your ubiquitous social media usage, I would say the majority of what Blackbird is used for is creating professional content that's then delivered in high quality for distribution out to OTT, VOD, SVOD services, or linear broadcast, and not digital and web platforms and things like that as well. And we'll talk about the architecture today. Blackbird is used a lot to access and apply cloud workflows on top of traditional on-premise infrastructure, as well as in the AWS infrastructure, or indeed as a kind of bridge to help that migration from on-prem up to AWS and run hybrid operations within that. Now, we'll get stuck into the architecture a little bit more in detail. Until then, let's have a little look at some of the background and some of the reasons that people are using Blackbird. Now, Blackbird's actually been around quite a long time. For a lot of people in the industry, it's a relatively new name. But for about 15 years, we've been in use in the cloud, working with pretty much every major post-production facility in Soho and Manchester and beyond. And we still work with those production facilities. They provide Blackbird as a service to a whole wide variety of broadcast productions out there, including BBC, ITV productions, and so on. So we're very proud of this history, really. What it means is not only have we been honing our technology and operating with video in the cloud for longer than really cloud was even a thing, back when it was still just called the internet, but it also means that we've been tried and tested and validated and used in really the highest end of broadcast post-production workflows. So we've ended up with a very good understanding of those workflows, great support for all of the various file types and things like that might be involved, and obviously a very strong tool set to allow that kind of content creation as well. However, in the last few years, what we've seen is with the rise of Amazon Web Services, a lot of organizations starting to not just move media into the cloud, but obviously move a lot of other functions and services up into that cloud infrastructure. And the key thing there really is the movement of live production workflows up into the cloud and the enablement of remote production. Now, for us, what we've seen there is a huge growth in the use by lots of the names you can see here, football clubs, leagues like the NRL, the esports companies, Venn and Riot and so on, all the way up to the fact that we're used by IMG and Delta Tray across all of the European Tour Golf, the NFL, and lots of other kind of high-end sports franchises, as well as on the news side where we have about 50 regional news stations. You can see here the State Department in the US and A&E networks and things like that as well, where we're often not just doing the post-production bit, but actually the key focus is around making the most of live content, live streams and live production processes, and how you're producing and post-producing content in a quick and easy way off the back of that to get that out to your endpoints. So we've really got quite a wide range of workflows out there, and we'll dig into a couple of these. And obviously, we can take questions and go a bit deeper on any of these as we need to. Okay, so 2 examples just to talk about today in terms of companies that are using us, both Blackbird and Blackbird on AWS in interesting ways. So A&E Networks is well known, one of the biggest cable networks in the US. And we've been working with them for a little while to start to basically give access to multiple different departments within the business, to a large repositories of content that they've got. And in recent times, what they've started to do is obviously migrate and move this, which is a huge task because of the amount of programming they have, up into AWS. So we're in a position now where not only are we tied into every department with A&E, from social, live clipping on shows such as, recently changed, but shows such as Live PD, doing clipping from live out to social media, through digital departments into the production process, and actually integrated back into kind of craft finishing processes and things like that. But that exists across siloed on-premise storage and AWS-based storage as well. So we're not only a critical tool for their video production processes, but actually key in terms of helping and supporting that the long and complex migration of all these different parts of their portfolios up into AWS. One other example we've got here is a recent new customer for us, which is Riot Games. They're doing some very, very interesting things using multiple services on AWS at the moment to run their live productions and live esports events productions through Amazon Web Services. And for us, what we are able to do is, we'll just look at this in more detail, piggyback on to those live streams and the content and those other services to do with the live production running in AWS. And with no additional infrastructure or no breakdown of that AWS-based service, we're able to allow them real-time professional editing on that, not just to go out to digital and social platforms, but actually creating clips and short highlights reels that are coming back in to the live broadcast as well, which really speaks to the speed of turnaround that Blackbird has available within its editor. So as a recap, before I hand over to, or before I talk a little about the technology and the architecture and hand over to Lee, a few of the reasons why customers come to us are kind of recapped here. Now, speed and agility is very important, not just agility of having a cloud native service, which is browser based, so there's no infrastructure set up in terms of adding users or anything like that. But we'll look at the speed of turnaround from live streams that we have as well today, running through AWS. Cost savings is an important one for us. We sit inside your AWS and read your content directly. So not only are we not moving content around to serve different people in different parts of the world, but we're also, because we're browser-based, not adding any infrastructure when you scale your users up. And that can represent some real cost savings there. Obviously, remote workflows is key. For the Blackbird editor, the fact that you can do professional real-time editing on as little as 2 megabit internet connection is pretty crucial at the moment, with a lot of people working from home. And quality, I've mentioned not just quality of the tool set that we have in the browser, but the quality of the output. Because of the way we're architected, we can give you not only a low bitrate social media output, but we can give you a very high quality broadcast video output as well. And video everywhere is not just about creating video for multiple endpoints, but giving access to video for everyone within your business. So a single point of access with suitable tools for a range of teams that sit within an organization, again, without any headaches around the infrastructure side of that. Okay, so very quickly, just to do a bit of a technology intro here. Essentially, Blackbird has a piece of technology. You can have a look at this on our website in the solution page that allows me to use video in a browser differently to anything else. So I can come in here, move full frame jog and shuttle through this piece of media, step frame by frame, play forwards, backwards, multiple speeds, and lots of advanced navigational tasks, including coming in and viewing every single frame of content. And this is a completely unique, we have about 14 patents around this technology. It's been designed specifically for manipulating and navigating video in a browser. There is no other technology that can allow you to do this on video inside a web browser interface. And it's on top of this that we've built the edit tools and the unprecedented control and functionality that we have inside the browser. So if we look at how this ties into the AWS architecture, we can explain that here. Now, what we do is, if you have Amazon Web Services, you have streams coming into this, or you have video files existing on the in NS3 storage, then we deploy a piece of software called Blackbird Edge. And this would just run on an EC2 machine inside your own AWS. We're going to watch your S3, and this can be a multiple shared or mounted watch folder configuration into S3 storage, or we're going to take your live streams. You can see here Zixi, RTMP, HLS streams running in through the AWS infrastructure. Essentially, we're not going to move your content anywhere else. We're going to deploy Blackbird into your own AWS. Now, as soon as the Blackbird Edge sees that content, it's going to create that version we just saw on our website. That goes to the Blackbird cloud where the edit function sits, and that's where your users log in to access that content. That can be on a very low bandwidth internet connection. And essentially, as we'll see in the demo, they perform their functions, they publish something, and at that point, actually, all we do is we give a publish job with the associated metadata back to that Blackbird Edge running on that EC2 machine. We're then going to go back to your S3 storage or back to that stream mezzanine that's come into the AWS platform. And we're going to use that original source media inside your own AWS instance to publish and render a video asset out. So that can be delivered straight to social media, dropped straight back into your S3 storage, or indeed delivered to various MAM, CDN, or CMS functions that can be running inside AWS as well. So a couple of key advantages here. All of the storage, processing, rendering, asset delivery, stream management, all of that heavy lifting is happening on your existing content in your existing AWS setup. So Blackbird is not adding any additional infrastructure or content storage, duplication of content storage or anything like that within your AWS. What that also means is when we publish, as I mentioned before, we're publishing against your source, which gives us the ability to go all the way up into the hundreds of megabits a second in terms of bitrate, supporting in and out of multiple standard video formats as well. But the real thing here, that one of the real benefits is around scale. As I mentioned before, if you're working on a cloud-based application workflow, every user needs a virtual machine with the application running. You need quite a lot of bandwidth and infrastructure to connect to those, and you need local storage and your files moved around between different sites to support that hosted application workflow. With Blackbird, if you have Edge watching your S3, then you can have one person, 10, 100, 1,000 people editing on that content. There's no infrastructure requirement there, again, because everything we do is 100% natively running inside that browser interface. Okay, so that's enough of me talking for a bit. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how we integrate into your AWS rather than being an additional service on top. And now I'm going to hand over to Lee. He's going to share his screen and give us a bit of an intro on AWS before we have a look at this in action in the demonstration. Lee, I am.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I've got you.
So I'll share my screen. If I can.
Yeah, I think you should have the appropriate
I've got
all as well.
Yeah, I've got security. Okay, let's try again. Is it sharing now? Implies I am. Can you see it?
Yes.
Cool, great.
I can see a black screen at the moment.
Yep,
I'll let you know
and hopefully it's coming now.
There we go. Yeah, we've
Okay,
got you.
cool.
Go for it.
Thanks, Ollie.
No worries.
Little security warning on macOS, but we're in there. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Ollie, for inviting me. So I'm going to give a quick overview of AWS. This is mainly aimed at people that maybe not interacted directly with AWS or been a direct customer of AWS. So AWS is Amazon Web Services. We're a cloud computing company. We provide IT infrastructure via the internet for customers, whether they're of all types of industries. So obviously in this particular context, media and entertainment, but across the whole range of industry, allows customers, both large and small, to be able to consume IT services, whether that's compute or storage or database, etc., through an API, and be able to pay as you go. So you don't have to predict what your usage, what your consumption would be. You consume on demand. You ask for more resources, such as more virtual machines, compute machines, and we provide it via the API. If we focus a little bit on what this means for media and entertainment customers, it allows you to be able to focus more on your content and not necessarily on the infrastructure you require to be able to either process or deliver that content to your end users. So we talk about it in Amazon terms of not doing the undifferentiated heavy lifting. So rather than focusing on predicting how much infrastructure you need, provisioning, maintaining, patching, securing, you're able to leave that for Amazon ourselves to actually manage the management of that infrastructure and provide that to you, and you can then build your applications, construct your application, and deliver the content to your users. It allows for agility, so the ability to be able to adapt to your requirements, adapt to peaks and troughs in demand from your users. If you're very busy with new programming, for instance, you can scale out, handle that, and then scale back during the quiet times. We provide features and services such as being able to use analytics and machine learning on your content, whether that's your media content or whether that's analyzing usage data to understand your users more closely. Be able to deliver globally across the world. We have regions and IT infrastructure across the world in many countries, and I'll go into a bit more detail on that. And also the cost savings that this brings, that you don't have to provision capacity infrastructure trying to predict your peaks 2-3 years ahead. You're able to scale your capacity, your infrastructure, as and when required. This essentially means that you can save money by only having the infrastructure just above what you actually require, rather than having to provision for those peaks. So what sets AWS apart? So there are other cloud computing providers. I'm going to run through some of the key things that we see as AWS sets apart from those other providers. The first one is the security and compliance. So we provide a lot of security features built in, whether that's physical security, but also the application level security, networking security. But this is very much what we call a shared responsibility model. So we work with our customers. It's a shared responsibility between us and our customers to be able to provide the security of their content and their data. So we provide the physical infrastructure, security of the networking, but we also provide the tools for our customers to be able to secure their content, so they can control who has access to their content, who is able to modify their infrastructure internally, and integrations with other authentication systems, so on-premises authentication systems such as Active Directory, and also providing the monitoring tools and the ability to be able to monitor and protect those your infrastructure whilst running on AWS. We provide over 175 different services through our APIs. And just to give you a quick overview on this, you'll see, I'm not going to go through all of these services, but it gives you a range of the services. So we have the fundamental services such as compute and virtual machines, being able to run serverless compute. This is where you can focus on just writing your functions in a high level language, be able to deploy that to AWS. We scale and manage the execution of those functions, but also things like media services, specifically for being able to transcode and deliver content through to your end users. And also things such as being able to interact with your users using contact centers, allowing your customers to interact with your contact staff to handle the CRM part of the company, so the customer relationships. We've been operating since 2006, and we have over 1 million customers actively using AWS services on a monthly basis. And we have a global footprint of 24 regions across the world. So we have 24 regions. Each region has multiple availability zones. This is unique for cloud for AWS. Other cloud providers often have a region that may only have a single data center, but with AWS regions, we have at least 2 availability zones, and actually most of our regions have at least 3 availability zones. An availability zone itself is an isolated collection of data centers, so one or more data centers. These are connected to other availability zones and the internet over multiple redundant internet connections. And this allows you to be able to deploy a highly available application in a single region. You don't need to go multi-region. But providing a single availability zone, if there is an impact such as a natural disaster or a failure of the grid supply, or a flooding or some sort of natural disaster like a weather event, it would only affect one availability zone, so your application can still operate over the other availability zones within the single region. And in addition to those regions, we have over 200 edge locations. These provide services such as CloudFront, our content delivery network, and also over 80 direct connect locations. This enables our customers to be able to directly connect into the AWS infrastructure via direct connections at these direct connect locations rather than coming over the internet. These are for when you're delivering content into AWS, either both live or on-demand content, for instance. And then these are all connected over the Amazon backbone, which is a network that we operate, undersea fiber networks connecting all of our public AWS regions and many of our edge locations. Just going back to the machine learning part, so we have more machine learning operates on AWS than anywhere else. So we support many different libraries and models that our customers can bring, and we operate a stack of machine learning offerings. So for those data scientists who want to get deep, close to the compute and be able to define exactly what they want in terms of the libraries they're going to use, we provide libraries that are optimized for running on our compute infrastructure. The next level up is we offer a service called SageMaker, which allows customers to build their models and deploy their models to our infrastructure. And then at the top level, we have specific services using machine learning, but available through an API for developers that don't need to understand machine learning directly. So services such as recognition to do object recognition detection in video and images, or something like transcribe, being able to extract text from the spoken voices. These services are, as I mentioned before, they're high level, allowing developers to interact with them directly through an API without the necessary need of understanding how machine learning works and how models work directly. Now, we provide a lot of this infrastructure, a lot of services, lots of building blocks to build applications, but we also have a very rich ecosystem of partners. So tens of thousands of our partners building applications, building services such as Blackbird on our infrastructure, and building applications for specific customers and for specific industry needs. building on top of the services that we provide. And then finally, just to position Amazon Web Services, we are the leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So this is the latest one from last year, showing us we've been the ninth, the cloud leader for the ninth consecutive year. So you can see AWS in the top right-hand corner. And as I mentioned, we've been there for 9 years, recognizing our reliability and our breadth of offering to our customers. Then just focusing on media customers, top global medias around the world trust us with their crucial workload. So I'll mention just a few of these. So if you look at on the left-hand side, the content creation, Untold Stories, they're the logo there is quite hard to read, but it's just on the bottom left, just one up, Untold. They were the first virtual studio in the cloud. They built a creative studio in the cloud when they started. They don't have any physical infrastructure. They run entirely in AWS, allowing themselves to create video graphics, computer graphics, using remote desktop infrastructure in AWS. On the media supply chain, Discovery Channel operates over 400 channels using Playout from AWS, delivering to over 200 countries. In the distribution box on the right-hand side, Netflix and BBC. Netflix is well known for operating on AWS, delivering their services via AWS, and also BBC iPlayer. A lot of the BBC iPlayer using our services to deliver to their users. And then in the data science piece, I'll call out Formula One. So Formula One use Amazon SageMaker that I mentioned earlier to develop machine learning models. This allows them to provide F1 insights. So this engages with the fans, be able to see the predictions and the understanding and analyzing the data that's coming off of these off the Formula One cars. So that's a quick run through, and I'll hand you back to Ollie.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks very much. So I think if you're on this call, you probably have a rough idea about either Blackbird and or AWS, but hopefully that gives you a bit of additional background and an introduction there. And obviously the key thing that we're talking about here is the fact that Blackbird is not another platform that you move your content to that happens to be architected on AWS. Blackbird is a service that deploys into your existing AWS. So if you're thinking about putting content up in the Amazon cloud, or if you already have streams, services, and content sat on an S3 bucket, Blackbird is a very light touch add-on that doesn't actually require you to change that infrastructure at all to use your content. Okay, now talking about using content, let's have a login to the platform and a run through what that looks like. Okay, so I'm back in the web browser here. You should be able to see my screen again. And I'm going to go and log into the platform here. Okay, so I've come into the Blackbird Cloud and we come into what we call the control center. Now, as an editor, you see I have access to multiple what we call accounts. You can think of these as projects in a way, but you have a multiple users within each account and differing roles and content and all sorts of settings within that too. And most of the time, I will come in here as a user, pick the account I want to work in and choose to edit in that. I'll do that in a second, but I can actually also just click into the account here itself. And you'll see this is the administrative layer where we're going to manage users, can view usage statistics around editing, storage, and publishing. I can preview my media in here. So essentially, anything that I've got in here are either streams or content that is existing on my AWS instance. And I have full instant access to anything here in terms of both preview of the video itself, but also access to change and manipulate various metadata that's associated to these assets as well. You can actually even do publishing from within the control center here. So if I have the appropriate rights, I can take a piece of content, drag and drop and publish over as well. I can set up my inputs. So this is either live streams, as we've mentioned, or watch folders or storage locations, again, reading directly from your S3. And I can set up my publishing as well. So this could be a destination, such as Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and so on. Or it's a video asset delivery. And this one is set up, as you can see, to be a simple, clean H.264 publish. But actually within a single button here, I can configure multiple outputs. So I might also want an MPEG-2, I might want an audio-only delivery or an XML metadata delivery as part of this, or let's say a 50 meg XDCAM MXF as well. So as you can see, within each published destination, we can have multiple deliverables within that we're going to hand off to a designated place within here. So as I say, this could be a local file delivery. It could be made available for download. It could be delivered directly back into your S3, or indeed an FTP delivery or something like that as well. But we'll come back to this, and again, I can answer questions in more detail. But as I said originally, for most users, they come into Blackbird, they hit the edit button, and it opens up another tab here and brings me into the edit interface. So essentially what I've got now is running inside just a standard web browser. We have no toolbars, no extensions, no plugins or anything. So it's standard laptop, standard browser interface here. And I have instant access to my entire catalog of content. So everything I've got here essentially is reflecting what's coming into my S3. And as soon as a file exists, remember, that Blackbird Edge running on that EC2 is going to give me my edit version to work on here. So I can take a file here, have instant access to this. There is no download time. This does not exist on my local machine. And I can come in and freely full frame jog and shuttle through an unlimited amount of content here. Okay, let's take the next file. This one I happen to know is, if I spool to the end here, 24 hours long. So with absolutely no delay, latency, or anything like that, I can come to any point in this media and access every single frame. Now, as you'll know, that's a very different experience to traditional workflows where you may be either connecting into a remote machine, which I'm not doing, or downloading proxy files and things like that. If I were to try and download a 24-hour proxy file, it would probably take me quite a long time. What we have on Blackbird essentially is an instant access to every single frame of an unlimited amount of media. And as a reminder, the source media, those streams are all sat exactly where they are today inside your S3 or inside your standard storage infrastructure. Okay. So I have an unprecedented level of access to this. Again, no latency or buffering or anything like that. And then I can start to create. So I've got my files, I can search through these. We have a full metadata backend to allow me to find content here. And we also have live stream access too. I can tell this is live because it has, aside from the name, it has an orange bar underneath it, which tells me that this is actually a growing file coming into the platform. In exactly the same way, I can access any of this, but if I come to the end of this stream, you'll see these chevrons tell me that it's growing, and indeed there, I've had a chunks of media coming in here. Now, for me to sit watching this live feed, I'm about 5 seconds behind live. So just within a few seconds of this live event, I can be sat watching this. I'm going to get rid of my audio so you can hear me. And if I see something that I like, I can hit a hotkey here. I'll do a mark and out, come back, mark and in, and then I drag and drop and publish. And this is a Twitter publish, so I get a Twitter pop-up, but essentially within maybe 10 seconds of live, I can have actioned that publish and sent that off to be published and distributed. And obviously all of the rendering, all of the work is happening back inside your AWS, completely separate from the user themselves, which just adds to the speed of delivery there as well. Okay, so this interface is used a lot by social media teams, digital production teams. Very, very simple. I can actually simplify it even further. If I were to come in here, you can see I can get rid of my transport controls and operate large, easy to use kind of clear in, clear out buttons and things like that. And indeed now what I'm doing is I'm still working in a non-technical interface, but I've come into something we call the storyboard, which is a little more than an in and out point clip. This is to allow me to do some sequencing. So I can still mark and in, mark and out, drag and drop and publish directly from my source stream here, but I can also choose to start to create a sequence of clips. Again, I can, in a completely non-linear fashion, move anywhere I like in my content. I can drag and drop time codes around and type those in as well if I wish to. And I can start to create a piece of sequenced content. So let's grab a few clips and I'll drop them in here. Okay. So I can come in here now and I can manipulate this sequence. It's pretty easy for me to come in and move my clips around. I also have instant, accurate representation of it here. Everything we do is rendered in the browser session itself. So all of my content that I've got available to me on AWS, I can not only view it, make selections from it, but I have a completely real-time, accurate preview of anything I'm creating, rendered by my browser itself. So I'm not using bandwidth, we're not going back to servers for previews or anything like that. And if I'm happy with the sequence that I've created, I can drag and drop and publish that directly out here. I mentioned, we saw before a Twitter pop-up. Every single publish button can actually have an independent publish metadata pop-up. So this one here is quite a complex form for me to fill out with drop-downs and a bunch of metadata that essentially coordinate is associated to my CMS or my MAM. And when we deliver that video asset, we're going to deliver all of this published metadata in a sidecar for use later on. It's also worth mentioning that all of these publish buttons can automatically brand. So we can put on a logo overlay, pre and post roll bumpers, square publishing, portrait publishing, and so on, individual to every single button here. So far we've seen a very simple clipping interface. We've seen a simple sequencing interface, all designed to allow you to find and use both file-based and live streams and produce content very, very quickly. This is also used, however, for collaboration. So a lot of the time we might have users that come and create sequencers or select pieces of content here, and then another user might come in and view these in what you'll recognize as a more traditional nonlinear edit timeline. So now I've changed my view, I've got some proper controls again, and you should recognize this as a pretty familiar NLE. In terms of the controls here, the native Blackbird controls are designed to be very, very simple. So depending on where I put my cursor determines whether this is bidirectionally or one directionally trimmed. Everything is completely real-time, frame accurate, and non-destructive as well. We also have preset keyboard shortcuts that mimic Adobe Premiere and Avid Media Composer and so on. So if you have users that are familiar with those tools, we can have those keyboard shortcuts ready for them as well. Now, what I'm going to do is just start to create a bit more an advanced piece of content here. So again, all real-time rendered, frame accurate, that are rendered inside my browser session, 100% in real time here. I have full independent video and audio control over this. And obviously what we're seeing here is exactly 100% frame accurate representation of the source media, including multiple video tracks. So I have got stereo audio here, but I could have a whole load of audio tracks coming in, allowing me to manipulate and manage multiple languages, commentary tracks, and so on as well. Maybe here I want to add a video and an audio transition. Let's pull that out a little bit. Okay, and again, just depending on where I put my cursor, I can easily come to the corner here and create a fade up at the top of my audio. Now I talked about automatic branding, but we can do that manually as well. So if I can bring on an additional piece of media here, that's just an animating sting. And we also have the ability on every piece of media to come in and do, you know, color selected fades. So I can do a fade from black in on the top of my content there. And I can do a fade, let's do a fade in from white on my end board here as well. Okay. So I have a very high level of control over my video and my audio on a very basic level here. But I also have a lot beyond that. So I can come and, oh, I think I've just lost my screen share somewhere. Okay, I'll see if I can get that back. I can go beyond that, and Blackbird actually supports up to 12 video tracks and 32 audio tracks. Every one of those video tracks is manipulatable. So not just full transparency support for video, but also scale, position, all keyframeable, color correction, and other various functions in terms of multiple layers of video control. And also on the audio side, I can manipulate every single layer and item within all of my 32 audio tracks. I am going to just get my share up and running again so I can show you this. And I'll demonstrate a bit more of an advanced edit within the platform there. I don't know what happened, but I think I just lost my connection for a minute there. Okay, so let's jump back in and grab this content. Bear with me for one minute. I will not be long. Okay. Right, there we go. I'm up and running again. Okay, so you should be back with me and be able to see my screen again now. Apologies about that. Okay, so as I said, I can do my manipulations that I've got on my video here, but I can now start to add some additional tracks to my edit. So I have a second video track here. I'm going to mark an in, mark it out, and bring in a piece of content on top of this. And you see what I'm adding here as well is a closed caption layer down at the bottom of my track here. And these yellow hashes are telling me that I've got a duplication of content in there. There's lots of other tools that are kind of hidden behind the UI that really will give you all of those functions that you would come to expect from any kind of NLE. Now, if I take my piece of video here, as I said, I have full transparency control over this, so I can put transparency mixes on any piece of content. And I can also come in here and you can see now some of the advanced functionality here that allow me full scale, size, and position control over my media. All of this, as I said, is keyframeable as well. So I can position, move, create picture-in-picture effects, use transparency to do overlays on my content and so on as well. And as I said, even do color correction to white level, black level, hue, and saturation control on my video media here as well. Now, in terms of my audio, the same thing. If I come down and right click on a piece of audio here, you'll see I have full pan and level control over this, where I can come in and again add keyframeable custom audio dips and mixers within this as well. Now, beyond that, you can see I've got a wide range of other tracks I can add to my edit here. So various markers, metadatas, real names, commentary, and other kind of tracks within the edit. Multiple closed captioning and subtitling tracks. So that's closed caption from metadata, where we're pulling metadata out of a stream and also delivering closed caption back out as metadata, or multiple burnt-in subtitle tracks as well. And even more than that, there's other functions within the platform here to do with adding voiceover. So I can come in, add another video track, and actually record down directly into my timeline here as well. So we don't have time to go super into every single feature in the editor here today, but hopefully you get an idea of how we're adding this layer that not only allows you to access your media in AWS, but also create not just simple fast turnaround content, but high-end sports highlights, news packages, content that's going to be delivered back out. Now, as a reminder, if I drag and drop and publish a piece of media that I've created on my timeline here, then all we're doing is sending that metadata back to the EC2 instance. We're going to use your source media and deliver a high quality video asset out. So the user who's editing from anywhere in the world in a standard web browser is never tied into that publish function. They're not connecting into your AWS instance itself, and they're not connecting to your source media. So it provides an extremely scalable, divorced access layer that sits on top of all the other services that AWS is providing. Okay, so we're getting tight for time, so I'm going to come over and pull up a few questions here. We've got quite a few in the box. I'll read some out to Lee if necessary. Otherwise, I'll answer some myself. You will, as I've said, get a poll pop up on your screens as well. So fill that in before you leave as well. But we'll do some questions here as well. I've got quite a few. Okay, question about Arabic language support and subtitles and so on. So yeah, we support every single language in terms of metadata input. So obviously, if you're typing into those publish metadata windows we've got, and it's going off to either a social platform, a CMS, or a MAM, then we have full language support for that. We also do support all of the kind of core languages in terms of the UI and the subtitling input. But we, as everybody does, you occasionally get requests for new ones. And the way that we're architected makes it very, very easy for us to add languages that might not be supported in subtitling into the platform as well. Okay, Somebody asked about growing files here. We've talked about streams. So yes, we support growing files. That can be us reading a growing MXF that might be written inside your storage infrastructure, as well as obviously any file that we see will actually come into Blackbird as a growing file as well. So you're never waiting to access your content. And yes, that's us supporting not just traditional live stream formats, but growing files being written in the platform as well. Question about internet bandwidth for editing. So as I mentioned before, you actually only need about a 2 meg internet connection as a minimum to watch and edit on a live stream. And the reason for this is that we're not delivering complete large files to you. We're not even actually streaming to your browser in the traditional way. You are pulling frames from a cache that we've created in the cloud. That's what allows me to move through the content in such a responsive and non-linear fashion. And also the fact that all of the rendering, all of your transitions, multiple layers, even the color correction is actually rendered by the browser, means that your internet connection can be very low indeed. And that's a really critical thing for us at the moment. We've had a lot of customers that have sent people home and found that remote working, as it has been in the industry for the last 5 years, is a little bit different when you've got all of your people actually at home and their kids are on their Zoom into their school and things like that. And the fact that we really are truly a low bandwidth requirement is a big benefit there as well. So a question here about connecting where AWS files are. So to confirm, what we don't read from Glacier storage, but we read from any kind of standard S3 bucket in various ways, and it can be a fairly complex folder setup inside S3 that we read from. What you don't need to do is move content anywhere out of S3 to different regional S3s or to persistent file storage in order for us to read it. It doesn't matter where your people are, we will always sit on top of whatever your standard S3 storage is. Okay. Let me read through a couple of other questions. A question here about sending sequences to other NLEs for finishing. Yes, it is possible. So when we're working on live streams, Blackbird is pretty much always going to be finishing those sports highlights packs, news packages, and so on, and delivering them as a finished video asset. When we're looking at more traditional file-based production workflows, we do have the ability to deliver our timelines back as an AAF file. That's an EDL that can be read by Media Composer or Premiere or something like that and finished. Now, we do a lot of this. This is a lot of our historical business has been in that way. And essentially the main reasons that our customers might go back to a finishing tool would be for color grading. So if you need to do professional color grading, or if you need to do really advanced image visual effects or image treatments and things like that. So for those types of content, absolutely, we can hand off and relink timelines back to source media and to other tools as well. Okay, so a question about what kind of, hi John, nice to join us, our use in local and international news stations and so on. So yeah, as I said before, we're in about 50 regional news stations in the US. We're also used across other multinationals, a very large financial services company, I won't say the brand, who we have a 5-year contract with across all of their bureaus globally. And for most of our news customers, essentially we're doing two things. We're giving distributed teams access to archive footage and library footage, and we're giving everybody the ability to pick up live streams, whether that's network news feeds or press conferences or anything like that, to do fast turnaround clipping as we've seen, but also to create those news packages that end up on digital platforms as well. So for a lot of our news infrastructure, we're kind of sat on the live end of that. And then we're delivering back into video servers, MAM functions, or underlie other systems that they may then service a newsroom system, or may go directly out for distribution as well. Okay, so I'll keep going. If you do have to go, I'll say thank you very much for joining us. I've just popped the email address up there so you can get in touch directly as well. But we've got a lot of questions, so I'm gonna keep going at these and stick at it. We've got one here about restrictions on the number of simultaneous users. There is no restriction. So as I say, if Blackbird can see a piece of content, then you could have 100,000, doesn't matter, any number of people editing that, because of course they're all working within their own browser session. So there's no bandwidth implications or anything like that. Obviously, what you do need to have, if you have a large amount of people, is enough infrastructure within your AWS to handle those publishing jobs and the encoding that's happening on the output from the platform. But in terms of users editing, there's no kind of limitation there at all. So got a question here about browsers. So we're not dependent on a specific browser. We're entirely JavaScript based. So we support any JavaScript native web browser. That includes Mozilla Firefox, Safari, and so on. However, we normally recommend Chrome. It is definitely the best performing browser that we see, but we do qualify all of the kind of standard web browsers as well. Okay, so let me fill through a few more questions here. How does this work for non-live feeds when we're talking about file-based content? All that content is on-prem. So essentially, as I said, the same Blackbird Edge software function will take the live feeds, or it will read files. And essentially all it's doing is it's creating that Blackbird version that allows us to do the editing in the web browser there. If you have content on premise, you can have Blackbird Edge running on premise, absolutely, and it can just read from your network attached storage or any kind of, indeed any kind of standard storage format on premise. And we can do lots of hybrid workflows there where you might have live streams running in AWS, you might have some on-prem storage, network attached storage as well, and maybe we want to be able to publish from the on-prem up to your S3. That's all possible. So we're very flexible in terms of working across multiple siloed storage locations in terms of file and live as well. Okay, question about doing without a CMS or a MAM and using a combination of Blackbird and AWS. So look, it's definitely possible. We do have customers who use us as the portal to view, find, and use their content just that may be sat exactly on a storage function within AWS. So yeah, that is a possibility. And obviously we have a lot of options around publishing direct to social or FTP delivery and things like that as well. However, Blackbird is not a MAM or a CMS. We do have media management, asset management functionality within the platform, and we do have distribution and delivery functionality within the platform. But in any complex workflows, we are normally feeding, sat on top of a MAM function or feeding into a CMS function most of the time. But we do have customers that don't have those and just use Blackbird as their main portal there as well. Okay, so getting through the questions here, still got a few coming in. So let me see here. Got a question I think I've just answered about accessing on-prem storage. Of course, that is absolutely possible. Question about where the editing software resides. So just a recap to that, your media and the Blackbird engine, so the ingest and the publish function, all sits within your AWS. When you're editing inside your own web browser. It's entirely browser-based function, but the Blackbird cloud is serving the content, serving those frames to your editor as you're using them. So there's really two sides to this. 99% of this workflow in terms of storage, compute, and everything like that is happening inside your AWS, your own AWS instance, alongside your content. And the Blackbird cache, that content that we've got that allows you to access this in your browser, is running inside the Blackbird cloud. Okay. Talking about a question about destinations within EMEA and US to send content. Because essentially we have standard file delivery. As I say, that one of the great things about Blackbird is the fact that when we're doing publishing, and when we're creating video, we are doing that within your infrastructure. So there's never really an issue to do with how or where we deliver to, because we're integrated directly into whatever the distribution channels are, the storage methods are, because that's where we're reading from in the first place. So as I said, we're normally doing a file delivery back into something within your infrastructure or within your AWS infrastructure, or we might be doing a direct social publish or an FTP delivery or something like that. But there's no limitations around destinations, certainly geographical destinations that we can deliver to either. Okay. Question about newsroom system integration. So we don't have any direct newsroom system integration. We haven't really needed it. And the reason for this is that Blackbird tends to sit a little bit upstream of that. So often you might create your content in Blackbird, you edit from your live streams or from your files. We will then give that back to a MAM or a video server function that would be sat underneath your newsroom system. So your newsroom system, most of the time now, will be reading from a repository of video content somewhere. We would deliver into that repository of video content rather than being the direct connection to the newsroom system. Okay. Question about collaboration and more than one person working on content here as well. So what we have is various tools within the Blackbird platform that are live and collaborative. So if you're logging and exchanging metadata and things like that, you're going to see that happening and have multiple people working on that content at the same time. If I create a sequence, whether it's a single clip or an edit or something like that, I can save and hand that off for another person to continue. But if two people try and open the same piece of content, then we're going to version that, we're going to branch that off, and they're each going to work on their own version of that. So the one thing we don't allow is we don't allow more than one person to edit on the same timeline. It's messy and not particularly effective in terms of managing. So that's one restriction we have. So the choice is either that you go some of the way and somebody else continues it. That absolutely gets done all the time. We have internal chat functions and things like that within the platform to help with that collaboration. Or somebody starts something and then multiple other people come in and branch off and build on top of that into their own versions as well. So lots of collaborative tools, but the one thing we don't allow is multiple people editing on the same timeline for some obvious reasons there. Let me read through. Again, geographic restriction for media distribution. Okay, so most of the time, we are, as I've said, we're delivering content back into a content distribution function or something like that, or a CMS. And geo restrictions and all of the packaging and DRM and all of the functionality about actually distributing that content is handled after Blackbird has created that video. However, when we're doing direct publishing to social media, then we do have advanced API integration. So as an example, within the Twitter Amplify API, we do have the ability to put on geo restrictions and things like that as part of the actual Blackbird publish as well. So the answer is yes, we do support geo restrictions, but it depends on the platform that we're delivering to be honest. Not all of them support that. A lot of the time I showed that complex metadata pop-up, we'll control geo restriction data input as part of the Blackbird publish, but the actual distribution is being done by another system. So we're not technically applying geo restrictions. We're just passing along the relevant metadata for that. Okay, a good question about recovery options if you lose your connection or something like that. So because we're browser based, not only do we have full unlimited kind of undo and redo functionality, but we also have a recovery function within Blackbird. So you can go and pick up work that you've done or that any other user has done and recover that. And we also have full version control within assets as well. So within that control center, if I find a sequence, I can see every single version of that sequence and pull that up and jump back to that. So very similar to if you're working inside Google Docs or something like that, we're storing every change, every version, and we have that fully recoverable within the platform as well. One of the benefits to being, a proper browser-based solution rather than a hosted application solution. Okay. So a question here about, I'll do two more main ones here. One about the licensing, which I'll get to in a second, and one about accelerated file upload and download. Obviously, file upload, download, and huge files is not something that we worry about because we're picking it up from your infrastructure. You are not uploading and downloading files to Blackbird. Okay, so if it's on premise, we're going to read it on premise. If it's on S3, we're going to read it on the Amazon S3. You do not have to move that content to Blackbird. So the upload and download is not a consideration. Obviously, what we are doing is moving that cache around, that proxy cache. It's extremely lightweight, as you've seen, and the size of the original file doesn't have an impact on that. So it's not really an issue, to be honest. Okay. Structure of the pricing. So yeah, I can talk about this definitely. Essentially, there's two things that Blackbird prices on, and it's normally an annual contract that's based on the number of users and the licensing around the edge application. And remember, that edge application is the ingest and the publish function. So we do not charge on the amount of minutes you do. We don't limit. You can have unlimited publishing to as many published destinations as you want. This is not a metered function. Blackbird is fixed cost. No bill shock, no surprise bills or overage or anything like that. But we do need to make sure you've got enough edge infrastructure to handle your live streams. So there's a license for the users, and then normally it's a license that might work on a per concurrent stream basis or something like that for the ingest infrastructure. But it's always a fixed cost proposition. Okay. A question about live news videos and sources available within Blackbird. We're not a content provider. We're just the service provider around the editing function. So it would always be your own content or your own source feeds that would come into your Blackbird account. We don't provide access to any content natively within the system. A question about timecode and timecode support. So we have full support for embedded timecode or time of day timecode, or both within both live feeds and file-based content. That's something that's obviously critical and has always been there for us from our background within the traditional post-production side of the business. So yeah, markers, source markers, edit markers, timecode, all of those kind of functions are supported within the platform there. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. We've got a couple of questions, but they're really very specific. So I'd say drop us an email, and we're more than happy to either set up a follow-up call or answer some of those for you over email as well. Otherwise, thanks again for sticking with us and for giving us your time today. Please do get in touch if you want a follow-up demo, and we'll be more than happy to talk. And thanks again to Lee Atkinson from AWS for joining us today and giving his time as well. Okay, thanks everybody. Goodbye.